Hello, welcome to the second edition of the Warriors Stock Report. Tim Bontemp, senior beat writer for ESPN, here with Anthony Slater. We have a couple preseason games now in the books. Very important, life-changing stuff. We've decided exactly how the season is going to go, clearly based off of two games where the starters played a half each against the Lakers without LeBron and Luka, and the Blazers, who actually are pretty interesting in this game on
Shaden
Wednesday.
Sharp, stock up. Shaden Sharp, he
I was
looked
going to
good.
say the first stock up is Shaden Sharp, who has another 12 days to get a rookie contract extension done. And after he had, I believe, 22 points in 23 minutes in the first half of, mostly in the first half of
I'll,
this game Wednesday
I'll
night,
also
like
say
he can get some money.
I saw a few Blazers people at halftime, and I was like, "Ooh, Shaden Sharp looked good." And they're like, "That's been about every day in camp. Like that wasn't like, oh wow, he's just having a nice night. It's like he's kind of looked like this,
Yeah,
behind the scenes."
he's a super interesting dude. 22. I know it's the Warriors stock report, so we're obviously starting talking about the Blazers, but Shaden Sharp, 22-year-old guy, super toolsy athletic wing. He's one of the more interesting restricted guys or rookie extension guys over the next week and a half. My guess is he's going to get a deal done ultimately. But, like you said, it's not surprising if that happens. If he can play anything like this year, the Blazers will be excited. But we should start there. I know, we're anxious to talk about the lineup. So I'll just put the question to you: stock up or stock down on the Warriors frontline players through the first, I guess, 48 minutes of game action for them in the preseason?
Yeah, I mean, one by one, it's probably different. I mean, I think we should get to Al Horford because I think he's been one of the stories of
Well,
camp.
let's start there. Al
Yeah,
Horford, stock up or stock down?
I would say up, which is interesting because, if you just look statistically, I think he only played 11 minutes last night, missed all four of his shots. I think he's 1 of 7 shooting.
Yep.
But, the bigger picture is like, the fit when you talk to people behind the scenes, which, it's not a surprise. You were around him in Boston. You know what type of, leader and player he is, the type of care the way he's aged, obviously, is good. So, he had that give and go in the first game with Steph Curry that Steph was kind of glowing about a little bit post game. And Steph loves passing bigs, and it's the way it's been put to me. With Al is like Kevon Looney, but add a high volume 3-point shooter, within the skill
Yes.
set, which is hugely important because it cracks open so many theoretical lineups. And even potentially can solve some of the Kaminga, fit issues if you can really kind of get him in 4 or 5 lineups with Kaminga. So stock up on him, but they're still searching. I think properly using preseason to really kind of like try to find various lineup combinations, and it's not just a front court thing to me. It's the shooting guard. Last night, Steve Kerr tried out Moses Moody at the 2. Moses Moody's almost,
Well,
in there. Yeah.
Let's just step down for a second. So
Okay.
I watched the first halves of both these games too. I would agree, especially in that game Sunday. I was not surprised, like you said, that Steph and Al were talking after the game about immediately having chemistry on the court. These are two of the smartest players in the league. Al's been a great read and react player for a long time. He's going to be diming guys up for passes, like that cut that Steph made to go past Dalton Connect to get that layup and get the highlight where he's pointing at the camera is like exactly the kind of thing I would see Al Horford doing well with Steph. He does a lot of the stuff that Draymond Green does offensively. Plus, he's an excellent shooter. And
Who he reminds me of? David West during those like kind
yes,
of dynasty days. But
yes,
obviously, David West again, if you stretch it out to 26 feet,
100%. Another
yeah.
super high IQ guy, tough, incredibly well respected veteran, happy to play whatever role is required. So yeah, I'm not surprised about the fit. I know Draymond hit a couple threes in this Portland game. Watching Draymond shoot though, like he's also just going to open up the court when you have him out there with Draymond, even if Draymond's nominally the center. Like having Al out there, having the ability to play another big with him who could shoot and space the floor, I think will help the Warriors on a lot of levels. They're just going to obviously have to manage his minutes, something that the Celtics have done the last few years. I'm sure the Warriors will do more of too. But the thing I wanted to ask you was, so first game, they start, the three mainstays, Draymond, Butler, and Steph. They're obviously going to start. And then they start Moses Moody and Brandon Pajemski, as the fourth and fifth guys. Then in the second game, they again start Moses Moody, and they start Al Horford instead of Pajemski in that game. So I guess obviously we're only a couple games in. As you said, they're correctly experimenting. We talked on the first edition of the report how the Warriors have a ton of different lineup combinations they can go to, and they're obviously still getting up to speed after getting these guys signed late, et cetera, et cetera. But if you had to guess right now, after seeing this first couple games, what do you think the opening lineup is, or the most used starting lineup? Because obviously Al and some of these guys are only going to play every so often. And what do you think it should be if it's not the one you think Steve ultimately will go with to start?
Well, and I think it's possible he does it matchup based, where the first game, and this might be an indictment of DeAndre Ayton dominating, but Steve went small partly because I don't think he viewed Ayton as a guy who was going to like really pound Draymond and go into the block and fight for every offensive rebound. And part of the reason he decided to start Horford in the second game was Clingan, right? 7'3". I mean, you saw it early. Clingan got a few offensive rebounds over Al Horford, but it's a active strategy of them not to overburden Draymond Green. That's part of the Al Horford benefit. And I think against the Nuggets in game 2 of the season, I would expect Al Horford to start because he's facing Nikola Jokic, and I don't think they want to start Draymond on him. Whereas game 1.
All right. Okay. So let me back up then, because that's a very political answer, though I do think it's also a correct answer. I'm kidding about the political answer part. What do you think the most likely, if we're just going to say in a vacuum?
Yeah.
What do we think the preferred starting lineup will be from Steve Kerr, and what do you think the preferred lineup should be?
I think it would be Steph, Podziemski at the 2, Jimmy, Draymond, Horford. I think that'll probably be the most likely, regularly used starting lineup when everybody's healthy. Because, most teams have big bruising centers. And I think, I know Draymond prefers, especially early in the season, at urgent time, prefers to play the 4 to start games. He loved it when Looney was in there. So and I say Podziemski at the 2, even though I know Moody started at the 2 yesterday, because Steve Kerr says he wants to get a look at, Moody as this on-ball, hound, because that's what they're searching for. That's one of the issues on the roster. Gary Payton II has not looked terrific early on. I think he's a -23. They've been, not great in his minutes. No. DeAnthony Melton's going to be out, at least, a month or more. And they just believe they need a guy to throw at, guards to start games. But the problem is, and Steve will say this, is like when you take Podziemski out and put Moody in, you lose ball handling, playmaking, capabilities. So I think he's going to eventually land on that 5 as like kind of maybe the preferred regular starting lineup. But he's the one he started in game 1. People got to remember, which is the small ball lineup, which is Moody and Podziemski in there. Horford out, Draymond's playing the center. They were, I'm looking now, plus 85 and 211 minutes late last season. They are using that lineup, and Steve is openly saying he knows he needs to use that lineup sometimes to start games, sometimes within games, because their data behind the scenes tells him how good that was. When everybody talks about that great Jimmy Butler stretch down the end of the season, that was the lineup that succeeded for them. Moody and Podziemski took off after the Butler trade. So on certain nights where either Al Horford's not available, which by the way, as you would know, might be a decent amount of nights, or they just are like, hey, small ball's the way to go tonight. Maybe, again, opening night, you're facing Ayton and the Lakers, and I know they kind of believe they can out small ball the Lakers, and that's the way to beat them. I can see them starting with that unit that they know their lineup data tells them has succeeded in the regular season prior.
Well, and that I think the last part, right? To me, this really is a question. And look, it's only 2 games, so we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. But it really feels like this is a question that comes down to Moses Moody or Brandon Podziemski as the 5th guy, right? Because I think I was sort of curious if you would lean into what I thought you'd say, which is when Al Horford's healthy and playing, more often than not, he's going to start.
Yeah.
So, and we know the other 3 guys are going to start. So now you're really just down to one backcourt spot. And to me, actually, I would argue that Moses Moody is a better fit with the group the Warriors now have than Brandon Podziemski, who is a little bit more of an on-ball guy, solid shooter, but kind of a combo guard, likes to have the ball in his hands. I would say maybe isn't quite as good of a defender or a different kind of defender than Moses Moody. Is a little longer. Moses is a good spot-up shooter. He's already hit, I think, 7 threes in 2 preseason games. And when you have Jimmy, who's going to have the ball in his hands a lot, and Steph is going to have the ball in his hands a lot, and Draymond and Horford, who are both kind of, going to handle it a little bit, can do the dribble handoff stuff, can operate out of the high post or at the top of the key with the ball, and are going to. Would it not make a little more sense to have a guy who's more of a 3-and-D spot up shooter kind of guy as the fifth piece there?
It feels like a more traditional lineup. He feels like a more traditional shooting guard, and like it's fascinating to see the Warriors do that because they're so untraditional typically in the way they do lineups. I would say two things, having talked to Steve plenty about this type of stuff. Like, number one, he's like loves Pajemski and will always point to like how he unlocks so many lineups. He connector. He loves to use the connector word.
Yes.
Even as he's playing the lineup yesterday, you can feel his apprehension. Well, like we lose the connection out there. We lose that extra playmaking and zipping them up in transition. And so Steve's adoration for Pajemski matters within this conversation.
For sure.
And also, when we'll see, like they say he's had an unbelievable camp. And every time if Steve's asked like, hey, who's kind of stood out, like first name he mentions. And I can feel the fans listening, like rolling their eyes about it a little bit. But like,